The girl learned early that mornings were the most dangerous time. Not because anything dramatic happened then. There were no shouting matches at dawn, no sudden fits of rage that woke the house. Mornings were dangerous because they set the tone. If her father woke in a foul mood, the day would bruise her slowly. If he woke quiet and tight-lipped, the day would bruise her quickly. She learned to listen for his boots. They sat by the door, heavy and cracked, caked with old mud that never fully came off. When he slid his feet into them, the sound told her everything. Slow and deliberate meant he was already angry. Fast and careless meant he had not slept. Either way, she knew to keep her eyes down. The house stood alone at the edge of the mountain road, a squat wooden thing with warped boards and a roof that sighed when the wind pressed against it. It had been built by her grandfather, back when men believed houses should outlast the people inside them. Now it smelled of cold iron, old smoke, and something sour that never left. Her mother had died when she was small. No one talked about how. The neighbors said sickness, her father said weakness. The girl never asked. After that, the house grew quieter, and the quiet became heavy. Her father did not drink much. He did not gamble. He did not chase women or disappear for days. In the eyes of the mountain folk, this made him a good man. He worked hard. He paid his debts. He kept to himself. What they did not see was how carefully he rationed his cruelty. He did not beat her in bursts. He beat her like a chore, the way a man splits wood or sharpens tools. There was a rhythm to it, a routine. Discipline, he called it. If the floor was not swept right, she was correcting her carelessness. If the water took too long to boil, she was correcting her laziness. If she spoke when he had not spoken first, she was correcting her mouth. She stopped crying early on. Tears only annoyed him. Silence pleased him. Silence meant control. By the time she was 8, she had learned how to make herself small without crouching, how to move through a room without stirring air, how to answer questions with just enough words to avoid suspicion. At school, she sat at the back. The bruises on her arms were hidden under long sleeves even in summer. When a teacher once asked why she flinched at sudden sounds, she said she startled easily. The teacher nodded and wrote nothing down. The mountains had a way of keeping secrets without trying. People believed what fit neatly into their lives. A hard man raising a child alone, strict father doing his best. A girl who was quiet because she was shy. No one wanted the truth that required effort. At night, after her father ate and the dishes were cleaned, she lay on her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. There was a crack shaped like a crooked river that she traced with her eyes. She imagined it carrying things away, sounds, words, her own name. Sometimes when the house creaked, she thought it was her mother walking. That thought frightened her more than comforted her. Ghosts could not stop blows. Ghosts could not speak for her. Her father believed fear worked best when it was unpredictable. Some days passed without a hand laid on her. Those days were worse. They kept her nervous. They kept her grateful. They taught her not to expect kindness, only its absence. When she was 10, she began helping him outside, chopping small pieces of wood, carrying water, cleaning tools. He watched closely, correcting her posture, her grip, her pace. Each correction carried the promise of pain if she failed to learn fast enough. He liked the mountains because they did not argue back. The road that passed their house was narrow and rarely used. A few trucks a week. The occasional hunter, men heading deeper into the hills for reasons they did not explain. Strangers did not linger. The house was not welcoming. That was why she noticed him. The quiet mountain man did not arrive like the others. He came on foot, walking slow, carrying a pack that looked older than she was. He stopped by the fence, resting his hands on the worn wood as if asking permission from the land itself. He did not call out, he waited. Her father noticed him from the doorway. His shoulders tightened. "Get inside," he told her without looking at her. She obeyed, but she watched through the window. The man was tall but not imposing. His beard was gray in places. His face weathered in a way that spoke of years rather than hardship alone. He did not smile. He did not scowl. He simply stood patient. When her father stepped outside, the air seemed to sharpen. "What do you want?" her father said. "Passing through," the man replied. His voice was low, steady. "Looking for work, temporary." "We don't need help." The man nodded once. "Didn't say you did." Silence stretched. The girl held her breath without realizing it. "There's a shed down the road," her father said finally. "Might need clearing." "Ask there." The man did not move. "I was told you might have use for strong hands." Her father studied him. The girl knew that look. It was the look he wore when measuring something he might own. "Can you split?" her father asked. "Yes." "Fix fencing?" "Yes." "Keep quiet." The man's eyes lifted then, briefly, toward the house, toward the window. They did not linger, but the girl felt seen in a way she never had before. "Yes," the man said again. Her father spat into the dirt. 2 days. Pays low. The man nodded. "That's fine." And just like that, he stayed. The first day, the girl was told to stay out of the way. She worked inside, scrubbing floors that were already clean. She listened to the rhythm of work outside, the steady thud of an axe, the scrape of wood against wood. No shouting, no complaints. Her father watched closely, correcting the man once or twice. The man accepted it without argument. That alone was unusual. By the second day, the girl was sent to carry water out to the shed. Her hands shook as she approached. She expected her father to bark orders, to hover. He did neither. The man took the bucket from her carefully, as if it might break. "Thank you," he said. No one had said those words to her in a long time. She did not answer. She turned and walked back toward the house, her heart pounding harder than it ever had under a raised hand. That night she lay awake, replaying the sound of his voice. Not kind, not cruel, just human. Her father said little at dinner. That was worse than yelling. Silence from him meant thinking. On the third morning, the beating came without warning. She had spilled grain, a small amount. She knelt to clean it, her hands moving fast, but he was already there. The strike knocked the air from her chest. She folded inward, instinct taking over. He hit her again, slower this time. Outside, the axe stopped. The man did not come running. He did not shout. He did not intervene. But the girl noticed something as she lay curled on the floor. For the first time, her father did not enjoy it. His blows were harder, less controlled. His breathing ragged. He was aware of being heard, of being known. When he finally stepped away, he kicked the spilled grain aside. "Useless," he muttered. She stayed on the floor until she heard the axe resume. Later, as she carried water again, her cheek burned and her vision blurred. The man took the bucket. This time he did not say thank you. He did not say anything. He looked at her face, not openly, not in a way that invited trouble, just enough to understand. That was how everything began to change, not with rescue, not with violence, but with someone who did not look away. The mountain had its own sense of time. Days did not rush there. They stacked themselves quietly, one on top of the other, until years passed without anyone noticing. Pain fit easily into that rhythm. So did silence. After the beating, her father did not mention it again. He never did. In his mind, punishment ended the moment his hand dropped. What came after was her responsibility. Her body, her memory, her problem. The girl learned to measure days by smaller things, by how stiff her jaw felt when she chewed, by how carefully she turned her head so the swelling would not pull, by whether her father's footsteps sounded satisfied or restless. The quiet mountain man stayed. At first it was only for work, fixing the fence where the ground dipped, clearing fallen trees, mending a corner of the roof that had sagged for years. He worked from morning until the light softened, stopping only when her father told him to. Her father liked men who did not ask questions. Still, something about the man unsettled him. It showed in small ways. He checked the shed twice at night. He spoke sharper than usual, as if reminding the heir who ruled it. He corrected the man more often, inventing faults where there were none. The man accepted every correction the same way. with a nod, with no change in his pace. That steadiness irritated her father more than defiance ever could. The girl watched from doorways and corners, from behind fences and windows. She never stared too long. She had learned that attention could be dangerous. But she noticed things, the way the man always faced the house when he spoke, the way he paused before entering rooms, as if announcing himself without words, the way he never raised his voice, even when her father tried to provoke him. She noticed, too, that her father stopped beating her when the man was close. Not entirely, not forever, but the timing changed. The blows came early in the morning, before work began or late at night, after the man had returned to the shed. They were quicker, less theatrical, as if her father wanted them finished and forgotten. The girl did not understand why this mattered to her. Pain was pain. Bruises healed the same either way. But something inside her had shifted. She was being accounted for. Not protected, not defended, but noticed, and that awareness settled in her like a quiet weight. One afternoon she was sent to bring nails to the shed. Her father's voice followed her out the door. "And don't linger." She nodded, her eyes on the ground. Inside the shed, the air smelled of old wood and iron. Tools hung neatly along the wall, more neatly than her father ever kept them. The man had organized them without being asked. She handed him the nails. Their fingers did not touch. "Leave them there," he said gently. She did. As she turned to go, his voice stopped her. "Does your cheek hurt when you chew?" It was not a question. It was an observation. Her breath caught. She froze, fear rising fast and sharp. No one named her pain. Naming it made it real. Naming it invited consequences. She shook her head once. He did not challenge her. He did not ask again. He only nodded as if she had answered honestly. "That's good," he said. "Pain shouldn't last longer than it has to." She left quickly, her heart racing. That night, she dreamed of her mother for the first time in years. Not as a ghost, as a woman standing in a doorway watching, saying nothing, just watching. Her father's mood darkened as the days went on. He found fault in the man's work, though the fence stood straight and the roof no longer leaked. He complained about the pace, though more had been repaired in a week than in the past year. "You planning to settle here?" her father asked one evening, his tone sharp. The man shrugged. "No." "Good. I don't stay where I'm not wanted." Her father snorted. "Then you won't stay long." The man met his gaze. Not in challenge, not in submission, simply present. "That's usually how it goes," he said. The girl listened from the table, her hands folded in her lap. She kept her face blank, but something tightened in her chest. She did not want him gone. That realization frightened her more than the beatings ever had. Wanting things was dangerous. Wanting people was worse. The mountains had taught her that everything left eventually. Her mother, kindness, safety, hope if it ever existed at all. The man noticed the change in her movements before she did. She flinched less when he passed nearby. She breathed more easily when she carried water to the shed. She lingered half a second longer before turning away. Not enough to be obvious. Enough to be human. One evening, as the sun dropped low and painted the hills in tired gold, her father sent her to collect kindling near the tree line. The air was cool, the forest quiet. She worked quickly, her ears tuned for footsteps. When she straightened, a shadow fell across the ground. She turned, panic rising, but it was only the man. He stood several feet away, his hands visible, his posture relaxed. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said. She nodded, though her heart still hammered. "Your father sent me to check the fence near here," he continued. "I thought I should let you know I was around." No one had ever warned her of their presence before. She swallowed. "Okay." They stood in silence, the forest breathing around them. After a moment, he spoke again. "When you were little, did you ever climb that ridge?" He gestured toward a rise in the distance. She shook her head. "Good view from up there," he said. "You can see the whole valley. Makes things feel smaller." She did not respond. She did not need to. "I won't keep you," he added. Just wanted you to know. She returned to the house with the kindling, her mind unsettled. That night the beating did not come, neither did it the night after. Her father watched her more closely instead. His eyes lingered. His jaw clenched when the man spoke to her, even briefly. Control, once threatened, rarely loosened quietly. It snapped. It happened during supper. The man was finishing his meal at the small table her father had allowed him to use. The girl stood at the sink washing plates. Her father's voice cut through the room. Why do you look at her? The question hung in the air. The man set his fork down slowly. I don't. Don't lie, her father snapped. I see it. You see what you're looking for, the man replied calmly. The girl's hands trembled. Water sloshed over the edge of the sink. Her father stood abruptly. She's mine. You understand that? The word struck harder than any blow. The man did not raise his voice. I understand she's a child. Silence slammed down. Her father's face flushed. His hands curled into fists. You don't tell me what she is, he said. The girl backed away, her spine pressing into the counter. The man stood then. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to put himself between her father and the table. I'm not telling you, he said. I'm stating it. For a long moment no one moved. The mountains listened. Her father's breathing grew heavy. The room felt too small, too tight. Then he laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. You think you know something. You don't know anything. The man nodded. That might be true. Her father stepped closer. Finish your work tomorrow and leave. The man did not argue. All right. The girl's chest ached as if something were being pulled from it. That night her father beat her harder than he had in months. Not because she had done anything wrong. Because control, once challenged, demanded repayment. He did not say the man's name. He did not need to. Each strike carried accusation. When it ended, she lay still, staring at the floor. Her father left the room without a word. She did not cry. Outside, the shed door creaked open and shut. In the dark, the quiet mountain man packed his things, and for the first time since he had arrived, the girl felt the full weight of what it meant to be alone again. She did not know yet that some things once seen could not be unseen. Not by witnesses, not by victims, and not by men who believed silence would always protect them. The man did not leave at dawn. The girl realized it when the house remained quiet longer than it should have. Her father usually rose early, boots on, movements sharp with purpose. That morning, there was only the wind, brushing the roof and the slow creak of the floor as the house settled into itself. She lay still, afraid to hope. When footsteps finally came, they were uneven. Her father moved through the room without speaking, his breath heavy, his mood closed tight like a fist. He ate standing, staring at nothing. Then he went outside. The axe did not sound. Curiosity pulled at her harder than fear. She edged toward the window. The quiet mountain man stood by the shed, pack at his feet. He was not leaving. He was waiting. Her father approached him slowly, as if every step cost effort. You're still here, her father said. I said I'd finish the work, the man replied. Today's the last of it. Her father spat into the dirt. I told you to leave. You told me to leave after today. Silence stretched. The girl pressed her forehead lightly against the glass. Her father's jaw tightened. He hated being corrected, especially when the correction was true. Fine, he muttered. Get it done. The man nodded and picked up his tools. Nothing was said about the night before. Nothing ever was. But the air between them had changed. It felt brittle, as if a single wrong word could crack it wide open. The girl moved carefully that day. Every muscle ached. Each breath reminded her of where the blows had landed. Still she worked. Sweeping, carrying, cleaning. Pain was familiar. It was manageable. What unsettled her was the waiting. Her father avoided the shed. That alone told her something was wrong. He found other things to do instead. He checked the fence that had already been fixed. He rearranged tools. He stood in the yard and stared up the mountain road, as if expecting something to arrive and fearing it at the same time. By afternoon, clouds gathered low over the hills. The air thickened. Storm weather. The man finished his work just as the first thunder rolled. He returned the borrowed tools, laying them out neatly. Her father watched him from the doorway. "That's it," her father said. "You're done." "Yes," the man agreed. "Get your things." The man hesitated only briefly. Then he nodded. As he walked toward the shed, his eyes flicked once toward the house, toward the window. The girl stepped back, her heart racing. She did not know what she wanted. For him to leave so the beatings would return to their old rhythm, or for him to stay and make everything worse. When he came out with his pack, rain had begun to fall. Slow at first, then harder. Her father did not offer payment right away. He made the man wait, standing in the rain, as if reminding him who controlled even the smallest kindness. Finally, he shoved a few bills forward. "Don't come back," her father said. The man took the money. "I won't." He slung the pack over his shoulder and turned toward the road. The girl watched him walk away, his figure growing smaller against the gray sky. With each step, something inside her tightened, then went numb. The sound of boots faded. The mountains swallowed him. Her father remained outside long after the rain soaked through his clothes. He stood there, staring at the road, his face dark. That night the house felt different, not quieter, heavier. Her father did not beat her. That frightened her more than pain. He barely looked at her. When he did, his gaze lingered in a way that made her skin crawl. She slept poorly, waking at every sound. Days passed. The beatings returned, but they were changed, sharper, more frequent, less controlled. Her father seemed angry at things she could not see, at shadows, at silence, at himself, though he would never have named it that way. Sometimes in the middle of his rage, he would stop abruptly, breathing hard, his hand hovering in the air, as if unsure whether to strike again. Then he would curse and turn away. The girl learned to recognize that pause. It was new. She carried it with her like a fragile thing. Weeks later, as autumn deepened, a truck appeared on the mountain road. It slowed near the house, then stopped. The girl froze, fear rising. Her father stepped outside, his posture tense. The truck door opened. A man climbed out. Not the quiet mountain man, younger, broader. He wore a jacket marked with the name of a logging company. "I'm looking for work done on a shed and fencing," the man called. "Told there was someone around here who did good repairs." Her father stared at him. "Who told you?" The man shrugged. "A fellow passing through. Quiet type. Said you might know." The girl's breath caught. Her father's face flushed. "No one like that here." The man frowned. "Strange." He was specific. Her father's hands curled into fists. "You got what you came for." The man hesitated, then nodded and climbed back into his truck. As it drove off, her father stood shaking. That night he beat her until his arms tired. After, he sat alone at the table, his head in his hands. The girl watched from the doorway. She did not feel satisfaction. She did not feel hope. She felt something else. The quiet mountain man had left. But he had not disappeared. His presence lingered in the world, moving through it without noise, leaving traces behind. People who asked questions. People who noticed. Her father sensed it too. He began to watch the road more often. He flinched at unfamiliar voices. He avoided town when he could. When he could not, he returned angry and unsettled. Control, once absolute, was slipping. The girl grew older. Her body changed. Her strength increased. She learned which blows hurt less if she shifted her weight, which days were safer than others. And beneath all of it, something steady took root. She had been seen, not rescued, not saved, seen. And that knowledge, quiet and dangerous, followed her father just as surely as it followed her. Neither of them could escape it now. Winter came early that year. The mountains darkened faster, the light thinning out by mid-afternoon. Snow did not fall all at once. It crept in quietly, dusting the ridges. settling into cracks, making everything look clean without fixing anything underneath. The girl welcomed the cold. Long sleeves were easier to explain. Bruises disappeared faster when no one expected bearskin. Her father hated winter. It slowed him, made his joints ache, forced him indoors with his thoughts. He grew shorter-tempered, his anger sharp and sudden, flaring without reason and burning out just as fast. He began to drink then, not heavily. Not enough for anyone in town to call it a problem. Just enough to loosen the control he prized. The beatings became uneven. Some days he hit her for nothing at all. Other days he stared at her, as if deciding whether it was worth the effort. She learned to stay quiet, quieter than before. Silence was no longer just survival. It was observation. She noticed how often he checked the road, how he lingered near the window when trucks passed, his body stiff, his face tight. She noticed how his confidence no longer filled the room the way it once had. It flickered, faltered. Fear had entered him. Not fear of her, fear of being known. In town, small things began to shift. A woman at the general store asked her once if she was feeling all right. The question was casual, almost careless, but it lingered. A man who ran the mill paused when her father spoke, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if listening harder than before. No one accused, no one confronted, but the girl felt it. The quiet mountain man had not spread stories. He had not made claims. He had done something worse. He had made people pay attention. Her father sensed it too. His temper flared more often in public now, his words harsher, his patience thinner. People noticed. People remembered. The image he had relied on for years began to crack. At home, the violence changed again. It was no longer about discipline. It was about relief. He struck her to empty himself of something that would not leave. Guilt, maybe, or the fear of being judged by eyes that were no longer entirely closed. After one beating worse than the others, he left the house and did not return until morning. She lay on the floor until her muscles stopped shaking. When she finally managed to stand, she caught sight of herself in the cracked mirror near the door. Her face looked older, not aged, hardened. Something in her gaze had sharpened, as if her eyes were learning how to stay open. That winter she turned 15. There was no mention of it, no acknowledgement. Birthdays had never mattered to her father. Time to him was only useful as proof of endurance. Still, she marked it quietly. Another year survived. Another year closer to something she could not yet name. One afternoon, as she carried wood inside, a knock sounded at the door. She froze. Knocks were rare, visitors rarer. Her father stepped forward, his expression already hostile. "What?" he snapped, opening the door. A man stood outside, hat in hand. He was older, with a lined face and careful eyes. "I'm from the county," the man said. "Just checking on properties up this way. Weather damage, safety." Her father stiffened. "We didn't ask for anyone." "Routine," the man replied calmly. "Won't take long." Her father glanced back at the girl. His eyes warned her. She lowered her gaze. The man stepped inside, looking around without staring. He noted the cracks in the walls, the sagging beam, the cold hearth. "How long you lived here?" he asked. "Long enough," her father replied. The man nodded. "And the girl?" Her father's jaw tightened. "What about her?" "She attends school regularly." "Yes." The man turned to her. "That true?" She hesitated only a fraction of a second. "Yes?" He studied her face, the faint yellowing near her jaw, the way she held her shoulders too carefully. He did not comment. "All right," he said finally. "Just needed to see." As he left, he paused at the door. "Mountains keep things hidden," he said lightly. "But not forever." Her father slammed the door behind him. That night the beating came late and hard. "You think you're clever," her father hissed, though she had done nothing. "You think people don't know what's mine." She curled inward, protecting what she could. But something had changed. She no longer believed him. Spring came slowly, dragging the snow back into the earth. With it came work, repairs, more trips to town. And with town came eyes. Her father avoided conversation now. He rushed errands. He snapped at anyone who spoke too long. The confidence he once wore like armor had thinned. The girl noticed something else too. He was aging, not just in years but in posture. His back curved slightly now. His hands shook when he thought no one was watching. He moved with caution, as if his body no longer trusted him. The man who had once seemed immovable was wearing down. She began to imagine a future that did not belong to him. That frightened her. Wanting freedom felt like betrayal. It felt dangerous. But the thought returned again and again, quiet and persistent. One evening, as she fetched water from the pump, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, heart racing. It was the quiet mountain man. He stood several paces away, older somehow than she remembered, thinner, more weathered, but unmistakably him. She did not speak. Neither did he. They stood like that for a moment, the mountains breathing around them. "I was passing through," he said finally. "Thought I'd see how things were." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. He nodded slightly. "You don't have to say anything." She studied his face, searching for something. A promise, a plan, an escape. There was none. Only presence. "People are watching now," he said quietly. "Not close, but enough." Her chest tightened. "He'll hurt me," she whispered. The man met her gaze. "I know." The simplicity of the answer unsettled her more than comfort would have. "I can't take you away," he continued. "I won't pretend otherwise." She nodded. Somewhere deep inside she had known that already. "But time is doing its work," he said. "And so are others." Footsteps sounded from the house. The man stepped back. "I won't come again," he said. "But I won't disappear either." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, melting into the trees as quietly as he had first appeared. Her father emerged moments later, his eyes wild. "Who are you talking to?" he demanded. "No one," she said. For once it was true. He stared at her for a long moment, then turned away. That night he did not beat her. Instead, he sat alone staring at the wall, his face drawn and pale. The girl watched him from the doorway. For the first time she saw not power but erosion. Whatever the quiet mountain man had set in motion was no longer moving outside the house. It was moving through her father, slowly, relentlessly. The years did not break all at once. They wore him down. Her father aged the way the mountains did not, unevenly, with weakness settling into places that had once seemed solid. His shoulders slumped. His temper flared faster and burned out quicker. The authority he had carried so easily began to feel forced, as if he were reminding himself as much as her. The girl grew taller. That alone unsettled him. He noticed it first in small ways. The way she reached shelves without stretching. The way she no longer shrank automatically when he entered a room. She still lowered her eyes, still kept her voice flat, but her body had changed, and he could not punish that away. The beatings became rarer, not because he softened, because they cost him more. His hands shook afterward. His breathing stayed labored longer. Once, after striking her, he had to sit down, his face pale, sweat beading at his temples. She watched him then, not with fear, but with attention. Pain still hurt, but it no longer defined the room the way it once had. In town, the looks continued. Nothing dramatic, nothing open, just pauses in conversation, a longer gaze, a question asked twice. Her father felt it everywhere. At the store, at the mill, at church, where he sat stiff and silent, eyes forward, jaw clenched. People had learned how to see without speaking. The quiet mountain man was never mentioned by name. He did not need to be. Her father began avoiding town altogether when he could. When he could not, he returned furious, his anger sour and directionless. Sometimes he shouted at her for things she had not done. Sometimes he said nothing at all, which was worse. Silence, once his weapon, now unsettled him. One evening, as they ate in quiet, his hand slipped. The spoon clattered against the table. He stared at it, breathing hard. "You think you're better than me now?" he said suddenly. She did not answer. "You think I don't see it?" Still she said nothing. He stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. For a moment she expected the old pattern, the raised hand, the familiar rhythm. Instead he hesitated. The pause stretched. He lowered his hand slowly, as if surprised by its weight. That was the moment she understood. He was afraid of her seeing him fail. From then on his violence shifted again. It became verbal. Accusations, threats about what would happen if she ever left, if she ever spoke, if she ever embarrassed him. "You'd be nothing without me," he told her. "No one would take you." She listened. She stored the words away, not as truth, but as evidence. She began helping in town more often. Small errands, short visits, always with his permission, always under his watchful eye. But eyes were on her now, too. A woman once pressed an apple into her hand without explanation. A man at the mill asked her how old she was, then frowned slightly when she answered. No one said the word abuse. They did not need to. The truth was already walking among them, quiet and undeniable. Her father felt it slipping. He drank more openly now. His movements slowed. His sleep grew restless. Sometimes she heard him muttering to himself late at night, his voice low and angry, as if arguing with someone who was not there. He began complaining of pain, his back, his chest, his joints. He spoke of it often, as if reminding the world that he was the one suffering. The girl listened without sympathy. Pain, she had learned, did not automatically make someone worthy. The quiet mountain man never returned. But his work continued. The county man came again the following year, this time with paperwork, questions, inspections that lingered longer than before. Her father bristled but complied. He had learned that refusal drew attention. At night, the girl lay awake and imagined a future beyond the house. Not a detailed one, just distance, space, a life where her father's moods did not determine the shape of the day. She did not yet know how she would leave. Only that she would. The moment came quietly. Her father fell one morning while chopping wood. His foot slipped. His body did not recover the way it once would have. He lay on the ground longer than he admitted was necessary. She helped him up. Her hands were steady. For the first time, their positions felt reversed. He noticed it too. From that day on, he depended on her more. For lifting, for errands, for remembering things he forgot. He resented that dependence, and it showed. But there was nothing he could do about it. Years passed. She became a young woman. He became an old man faster than he expected. The mountains watched unchanged, and slowly, without ceremony, the balance of power shifted, not through rebellion, not through escape, but through time doing what fists never could. By the time he realized what was happening, it was already too late, because what the quiet mountain man had truly changed was not the world around them. It was the future her father would have to live in. Old age did not humiliate her father all at once. It tested him first. It arrived in moments small enough to ignore, but frequent enough to unsettle him. A hand that refused to stay steady while lighting the stove. A breath that shortened halfway up the slope behind the house. A stiffness in his back that did not leave after rest or anger or denial. For a long time, he treated these changes the way he treated everything else, as something to dominate. He pushed himself harder, waking earlier than necessary, lifting loads heavier than before, walking farther into the woods than his body wanted. Each effort was a reminder to himself that he still controlled the rules. That time would bend if he demanded it loudly enough. The mountain did not bend. Neither did his body. The girl noticed the change before he admitted it, even to himself. She had learned to read weakness long ago, not because she wanted to use it, but because her survival depended on predicting it. A man who felt strong behaved differently from a man who felt his strength slipping. Her father had always been predictable in his cruelty. Now he was unpredictable in his fear. Some mornings he rose late and irritable, snapping at nothing. Other days he woke before dawn, restless. pacing the house as if movement alone might keep decay away. The beatings continued, but they were no longer certain. Sometimes he raised his hand and stopped halfway, his face tightening not with restraint but with pain. Sometimes he struck her once and turned away, breathing hard, ashamed of his own weakness, in a way he would never admit aloud. She did not react. She let his failures speak for themselves. In town, the shift became harder for him to hide. He had once walked with purpose, shoulders squared, eyes daring anyone to question him. Now his steps shortened. His gaze dropped more often. He lingered near counters as if needing them for balance. People noticed. They always had. They just had not needed to acknowledge it before. The first time a man addressed her instead of him, it happened so naturally that no one remarked on it. "How much feed you need?" the storekeeper asked, looking at her hands already counting. She answered. Her father stood beside her, silent. The moment passed, but something in him cracked quietly. Outside he rounded on her. "You don't speak unless I say." She looked at him. Really looked. His face was flushed, his eyes tired, his breath uneven. He was not frightening anymore. He was frantic. "He asked me," she said. The truth landed heavier than defiance ever could. He raised his hand, lowered it, turned away without another word. From that day on, his authority shrank by inches. Not enough for anyone to call it gone. Enough that it never quite fit him the same way again. At home he filled the space with words instead of blows, reminders, accusations, stories about everything he had sacrificed for her. "You'd have starved without me." "You'd be dead if I hadn't been hard on you. You owe me." She listened the way one listens to weather, present but unaffected. What frightened him most was not her silence. It was her steadiness. She did not rush to please him anymore. She did not flinch at his tone. She did not scramble to anticipate his moods. She responded, only when necessary. Dependence crept in the way rot does, unnoticed, until it had spread too far to cut away. He asked her to lift heavier things because his back hurt. Asked her to walk ahead of him on uneven ground. Asked her to speak in town when his voice tired too quickly. Each request tasted like defeat. Each time she complied without comment, it stripped him of another illusion. The illusion that he still owned her. Winter deepened that year, harsh and unrelenting. Snow piled against the house, forcing him indoors more often than he liked. His world shrank to the walls he had once filled with fear. Now they echoed. At night he slept badly. His dreams were crowded with unfinished moments, his own voice raised and sharp. Her crying, small and distant, the presence of someone watching from the edges, silent and unmoved. Sometimes he woke, calling out. She heard him. She did not answer. In the mornings, she opened the curtains wide. Light flooded the room. Dust drifted visibly in the air. He hated that. Shadows had always served him better. The county returned. Not with urgency, with routine. A man 1 year, a woman the next, paperwork, questions, phrased carefully enough to sound harmless. How long has she lived here? How often do you travel into town? Everything all right at home? Her father answered stiffly, his hands folded tight in his lap. The woman's eyes moved slowly, taking in details without staring. When she turned to the girl, the room went very still. "Are you safe here?" she asked. The girl paused, not because she feared her father, because she understood weight now, timing, consequence. "I am now," she said. The woman nodded and wrote something down. After they left, her father did not strike her. He sat alone at the table, his shoulders slumped, his face pale. "You don't know what you're doing," he muttered. "I do," she replied. He looked up sharply. "You think they'll save you?" She shook her head. No. That unsettled him more than hope ever could. His body declined faster after that. Pain settled into his joints permanently. His hands shook openly now. He dropped things more often than he admitted. He forgot names, dates, tasks he once prided himself on remembering. She took over without announcement, managing money, speaking for him, deciding what could wait and what could not. He watched it happen, trapped in a body that no longer obeyed him. The first time he fell badly, it happened in the yard. His foot slipped on ice. His body did not recover fast enough. He went down hard and stayed there, stunned, the cold seeping into him. She saw him from the doorway. He did not shout. He waited. Waiting was new. She walked to him slowly, studying the man who had once defined her entire world. His eyes searched her face. For anger, for satisfaction, for revenge. He found none. "Help me," he said. She did, but she did not rush. That moment rearranged something fundamental between them. From then on, he depended on her openly, for movement, for food, for dignity. People in town began stopping by under the excuse of concern. Old neighbors, distant acquaintances. They watched carefully. They remembered. Her father felt it everywhere. The way conversations paused when he entered. The way eyes flicked toward her, then back to him. The story of him was changing, and he could no longer correct it. One night, as wind pressed hard against the house and snow buried the road, he spoke softly from his chair. "You won't leave me," he said. It was not a command. It was fear, naked and unguarded. She stood in the doorway, listening. Leaving had once felt impossible. Now it felt inevitable. "I don't know," she said. The truth sat with him long after she went to bed. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to wait, to rely, to be seen clearly, without fear doing the work for him. And time, indifferent and patient, continued forward, preparing him for the part of the story he could no longer control. By the time autumn reached the mountain again, her father had stopped pretending that time was on his side. Seasons no longer meant change to him. They meant measurement. Each one marked what he could no longer do compared to the last. Tasks that once defined his worth now exposed his decline. He noticed it first in small humiliations that no one else seemed to care about. He could no longer split wood in one clean strike. He needed to rest halfway up the short path to the shed. His hands shook when he tried to thread a needle or count coins. He told himself it was temporary. It always started that way. But the mountain had no interest in his excuses. Cold settled deeper into his bones than it used to. Heat drained him faster. Sleep came in fragments, broken by pain and dreams he could not outrun. She adjusted her life around his limits without announcing it. Mornings began earlier for her and later for him. Meals were softer now, slower. She placed things within reach before he asked. She learned the rhythm of his bad days and worse nights. He noticed everything. He hated needing her. Dependence did not arrive dramatically. It crept in through necessity, disguised as routine. First it was lifting heavier items. Then it was guiding his arm when it refused to cooperate. Eventually it became washing him when he could no longer manage it himself. That was when something inside him finally broke. He avoided looking at her during those moments. Shame crawled over him in waves, but there was nowhere to put it. Anger had once been his refuge. Now it exhausted him too quickly to sustain. She performed each task without cruelty, without tenderness. That balance unsettled him more than hatred ever could. In town, people began treating him differently. They spoke louder, as if volume could restore authority. They waited for her to answer questions, even when he stood beside her. They offered help he did not ask for. The man who had once filled rooms now felt like furniture. The house itself seemed to notice the change. Dust gathered where he no longer walked. Tools rusted unused. His chair by the window became his primary territory, positioned carefully so he could see outside without needing to stand. He spent long hours there watching the path, watching nothing happen. Memory became his most active enemy. Without the distraction of strength, the past returned unfiltered. Scenes replayed themselves without his permission. Her childhood footsteps, her silence, the way she learned to make herself small before he ever told her to. At night he heard her crying again. Sometimes he could not tell whether the sound came from memory or from himself. Once, during a particularly restless night, he called out her name. She came. "Yes," she said, standing in the doorway. For a moment he almost said it, almost admitted something he had never allowed language to touch, but the words collapsed before reaching his mouth. Habit crushed them. Pride finished the work. "Nothing," he muttered. She nodded and left. That opportunity did not return. Winter came early that year. Snow fell heavy and wet, pressing against the house with quiet insistence. The path disappeared beneath white layers that erased direction. The mountain closed in. His health worsened rapidly. Breathing became labor. Pain radiated unpredictably. Sometimes his heart raced for no reason, sending panic through him like electricity. Other times it slowed so much he feared it had forgotten its purpose. She stayed close when it happened, not holding him, not soothing him, just present. Presence, he learned, was not the same as mercy. The county woman visited one last time. She was older now, slower, but her eyes remained sharp. She observed the man in the chair, the woman standing behind him. The way the power between them had fully inverted. "Don't you've carried this alone long enough?" the woman said to the girl quietly. The girl shook her head. Not alone. The woman understood what that meant. After she left, her father asked what had been discussed. "Logistics," she replied. He nodded, though fear flickered across his face. Logistics meant time had been acknowledged. From then on, his days became smaller. He slept more, ate less, spoke rarely. When he did, words often escaped him halfway through, leaving sentences unfinished. One evening, as the fire burned low and shadows thickened, he looked at her with sudden urgency. "You won't leave me," he said. It was not phrased as a command. It was a plea. She considered him carefully. Leaving had once been unthinkable. Now it was simply a future event, waiting its turn. "I'm here," she said. It was the only truth she could offer. The final decline took weeks. His body thinned. His voice faded into whispers. Confusion replaced anger. Sometimes he mistook her for someone else. Sometimes he stared at her with a faint, puzzled recognition, as if unsure how she fit into the remains of his life. On the last day, the house felt unusually still. Even the mountain seemed to pause. He lay in bed, breathing shallow, eyes half open. Light from the window traced patterns across the wall. She sat nearby, not watching him directly, but aware of every sound. His hand lifted slowly, weakly. It hovered in the air, fingers trembling, searching for something instinctively familiar. A lifetime of expectation hung in that gesture. No one moved toward him. His arm fell back against the bed, defeated not by refusal but by reality. In that silence, understanding arrived. Not forgiveness, not redemption, recognition. He had no claim left, no authority, no emotional debt to collect. Everything he had enforced had come back to him in its final exact form. Aloneness. His mouth opened. He tried to speak. Only air escaped. The breath that followed did not return. She waited, long enough to be certain. Then she stood and opened the window. Cold air poured in, sharp and clean. Curtains stirred. Outside, the mountain path lay empty, pale beneath the snow. The same path where a quiet man had once stood years ago, observing without intervening, changing everything simply by refusing to look away. The path had not changed. She closed the door behind her. Arrangements followed without ceremony. People came, spoke softly, avoided details. They remembered him vaguely, as one remembers a storm that passed long ago. No one asked her how she felt. She would not have answered. When everything was done, she packed a single bag. She stood once more in the doorway of the house. The chair by the window remained empty. The room held no voice, no fear, no command. She stepped outside and closed the door. The mountain remained. But it no longer held her. The man who had beaten her every day had lived long enough to experience the slow collapse of everything he believed made him powerful. Strength abandoned him. Authority dissolved. Control reversed. He had been cared for. He had been witnessed. He had been allowed to live with full awareness of what he had become. And when the end came, nothing softened it for him. He died understood, alone, which was the only punishment that could not be escaped.